Good morning to you all. I am honored and delighted to be speaking at the start of this year's Energy Press Forum. As I am sure you have already noted, the forum is taking place at a crucial moment in time. Energy is right at the top of the political agenda and of the concerns of citizens in Greece and in every other country in Europe right now. Today, the European Commission will publish its toolbox of measures that it believes national governments can and should be taking to deal with the current very high levels of energy prices. And these issues will be discussed also at next week's European Council EU Summit meeting. The EU is very clear about why energy prices are so high at the moment. 80% of it is because of the very high level of gas prices, global gas prices in Europe in particular, due to a range of constraints on both the supply and the demand side. To a lesser extent, there is the very rapid rise in the last 3 years in the EU's CO2 price, from a very, very low level to now a relatively high level. The wind industry is very clear about what the appropriate response should be to the current situation in energy markets. First of all, it's very clear that the levels of tax that consumers pay on electricity are too high. They have been too high for too long now. In most countries of Europe, consumers are paying more tax on their electricity consumption per unit of consumption than they are on their gas consumption. And that needs to change. And it's quite encouraging to see that many governments around Europe are now reducing the tax burden on electricity bills, shifting it also onto general taxation. The EU now has some very useful rules and important rules on flexible pricing for consumers. The national governments of Europe now need to implement these rules so that consumers can benefit more from dynamic pricing measures that will allow them to be paying less when wholesale prices are lower. And finally, the current situation in energy markets has reinforced the huge importance of the EU Green Deal and the need to accelerate the energy transition to reduce Europe's dependence on imported fossil fuels. Even before the current situation of high gas prices, Europe was paying 5 billion euros every week to import oil and gas from outside of Europe. Gas is still 20% of all of our power generation in Europe. With that level of dependency, Europe will always be at risk to the sort of prices that we're seeing in markets today. The European Commission's toolbox will support all of these points, will encourage governments to continue to cut taxes on electricity bills. It will say that governments can support industries that are hard hit by the current prices. Governments can adopt targeted measures for low-income households, including by using the revenues from the EU emissions trading system, something that the government of Greece has been advocating, specifically to use those ETS revenues to finance vouchers for consumers to lower their bills. The toolbox will also say it's fine for governments to introduce measures that allow consumers to defer their electricity payments temporarily. Governments will also be able to pass legislation to stop families being left in the dark if they cannot pay their electricity bills. The Commission, in the longer term, will also be announcing today that it's going to consider what it can do to develop joint European procurement of gas supplies from outside of Europe. And crucially, the Commission will say we need to accelerate the rate of deployment of new renewables. That long term, that is our best protection against these sort of prices we're seeing in the markets today. It will give us greater energy security, greater use of cheap and reliable, clean energy. The EU has, of course, proposed increasing Europe's renewable energy target for 2030 from its current 32% renewable energy to 40% renewable energy. And that proposal, along with all the other proposals in the so-called Fit for 55 package, are currently under negotiation in the Council of Ministers and the European Parliament. It's very important that alongside those new proposals, all governments across Europe take measures to simplify the permitting rules and procedures for new renewables. And we are very encouraged and very much looking forward, Minister Skrekas, to the proposals that you will be tabling soon to simplify your own permitting rules, in particular in respect of grid connections. The challenge here is immense. The EU's 40% renewable energy target requires us in the wind sector to build 30 gigawatts of new wind farms across Europe every year between now and 2030. At the moment, we are only building 15 gigawatts a year. We need to double how many new wind farms we are building. We are very encouraged also by the ambitious plans that you have in Greece for the further expansion of onshore wind, building on the 4 gigawatts you already have, which is already providing 15% of your electricity, and also for the start of your development of offshore wind in the Aegean Sea. And we're working very closely with Secretary General Sudoku and colleagues in your ministry on the detailed proposals for that, and are very much looking forward to the first auctions for those new offshore wind farms. Permitting is a crucial challenge here. In every country, the rules, procedures need to be simplified. The time taken to secure permits needs to be reduced. This is not about processing every permit application as quickly as we possibly can. It's simply about completing the procedures in a reasonable period of time, which is the 2 years set out in the EU's Renewable Energy Directive. Today, in Greece, on average, if you include the time that is often taken up in legal appeals against permit decisions, the average time taken to secure a permit for a new onshore wind farm is around 9 years. The grid connection permits are probably the biggest bottleneck here. And as I say, we're very much looking forward to your proposals to simplify the grid connection permit process, Minister Skrekas. The deadlines in the environmental impact assessments, of course, it's so important that they are always followed, deadlines for submitting opinions, giving consents, and so on. I stress, we are not asking here for very quick positive decisions. We're simply asking for the correct decisions, yes or no, to be taken in a reasonable period of time, the 2 years set out in EU law. We have been very encouraged by the progress you've made in recent years in some respects here. The old electricity production license has been replaced now by the much more efficient procedure that you have with your certification of the renewables producer. That's working very well with the online platform managed by the regulator. We are also very encouraged by the single digital platform that you have now for doing environmental impact assessments, where the wind farm developers can submit their studies online, and opinions on the project can also be entered on the same digital platform. So we are very confident that you will meet the challenge of reducing the time taken to permit new wind farms and of simplifying your permitting rules and procedures. Very important as part of this that there should be clear and transparent rules for spatial planning. And may I assure you all from the wind industry that we will always do our utmost to ensure happy coexistence between the wind farms that we are developing and the communities where we are developing those wind farms. Happy coexistence also with biodiversity interests. We believe very strongly in good planning, siting, and design of our wind farms. If you get that right, it significantly mitigates the impacts on biodiversity. Where it is appropriate, we also install devices on wind turbines. We use sound, ultrasound, or decoy systems to minimize the risk of collisions with birds and bats. And where it is necessary in a specific local context, we can even equip wind turbines with special features that allow us to stop the rotor blades from turning when we see, through the various sensors and high precision optics that we have on our turbines, when we can see that there is a significant risk of a collision. So we will do our part, Minister, to ensure that there is always happy coexistence between the wind farms we develop and the communities and all the other social and economic interests that have a stake in the same land and in due course the same sea that we are deploying. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you well for the forum over the next days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dickson. Exactly to the point, your remarks, I think. We don't have enough time, so just I would like to make one question. So a big topic on wind in the industry is the local reactions about the installations of wind farms, either onshore or offshore. What is your experience from projects across Europe? Are we talking about a global phenomenon or not? I would like a short comment from you.
In every country in Europe, citizens generally tell those who are doing opinion polls that 70–75% strongly support the continued expansion of onshore wind. We find that when we talk to the communities that are living close to onshore wind farms, the level of support is at least that, if not higher. It does require the developers of wind farms to engage communities at the earliest possible stage, to explain to them what the project entails, to listen to their interests and concerns and take them on board. It's very important also that local communities should be benefiting economically from having a wind farm in their community. Wind farms across the whole of Europe are paying local taxes to municipal governments. Municipal governments are benefiting directly from the revenues that they earn from this, and they can put them into community services. And it's very important that communities should understand how they are benefiting economically and financially as a result of that. Of course, the wind farms bring employment as well. They are investments in rural communities. And if we look at the modern globalized economy, there are not that many industries out there that are concentrating their investments not in the big urban metropolises, but in rural communities. And we're quite proud of the fact that we are bringing jobs, investments, and employment to so many rural communities, including remote rural communities across the whole of Europe.